If you want to call yourself a futurist today, there is absolutely nothing stopping you. There is no official licensing board and no mandatory certification required to claim the title. In fact, Alvin Toffler, widely considered one of the most prominent futurists of the 20th century, held his final degree in English literature, not future studies. In the broadest biological sense, every single human qualifies for the job. The human brain is built as an active anticipatory system. It is constantly weighing different possibilities and making predictions to help us navigate an uncertain world. Other animals don't process uncertainty the way we do. A young squirrel will still gather acorns in the autumn, even if it has never lived through a winter. That action isn't calculated foresight. It's a rigid behavior imprinted directly into its genetics. But our innate human ability to anticipate has a built-in trap. When our brains try to predict tomorrow, they heavily rely on past experiences, assuming that historical trends will simply continue forward on a straight line. Breaking out of that biological default setting and moving from casual guessing to professional foresight requires structure. To actually map the open possibilities of tomorrow, a practitioner has to develop 6 specific requirements. The first requirement is accepting that the future is entirely open as a possibility. This directly clashes with strict scientific determinism, a framework supported by historical giants like Albert Einstein, which argues that every single event was fixed the moment the Big Bang occurred. If the universe is predetermined, humanity is basically a set of marionettes on invisible strings, making future studies a waste of time. A futurist has to operate on the premise that our choices matter and that the future is actively shaped by human agency. The second requirement is the ability to see the whole picture. Futurists view societies, corporations, and individuals as complex adaptive systems, environments where every component is connected, reacting to external inputs and internal feedback. To make sense of these tangled environments, practitioners use systems thinking. Instead of looking at a single piece of a system in isolation, they map out causal loops, showing exactly how a new technology shifts the economy, which forces a new policy, which in turn regulates the original technology. The third requirement is intellectual humility. Human cognitive capacity is limited, our biases are strong, and the half-life of useful knowledge is shrinking rapidly. A professional has to continuously observe their own thinking and abandon fixed ideas the moment new evidence arrives. Together, these 3 traits, embracing an open future, thinking in systems, and staying intellectually humble, form a foundational mindset. They override the brain's natural urge to just project yesterday onto tomorrow. Once that mindset is established, the fourth requirement is mastering the toolkit. Because global systems are intensely complicated, futurists rely on a highly diverse set of professional methodologies to process them. They use techniques like steep analysis to organize information across social, technological, economic, environmental, and political categories. They run horizon scanning to look for changes on the fringes of society and draw futures wheels to trace direct and indirect consequences of an event. The data feeding into those tools brings us to the 5th requirement, a relentless interest in tracking future signals. These signals are the tiny, present-day seeds of change that will eventually grow and build the entire landscape of the open future. Every signal follows a life cycle. It starts as a weak signal, an anomaly. If it takes root, it becomes an emerging issue, eventually growing into a massive, undeniable megatrend. Occasionally, a wild card, a sudden, disruptive event, will tear through established patterns. Tracking this data manually is difficult, but large language models are speeding up the process. Futurists use AI to ingest scientific literature, government documents, and global news to extract candidate technologies and assist in emerging issue scanning. This rigorous data collection and structured methodology separates a professional's systematic anticipation from someone who just has strong opinions about where the world is heading. The 6th and final requirement is the ability to act. Reading the data doesn't mean much if you don't do anything with it. Anticipation is only complete when it is converted into a tangible strategy, a new corporate policy, or a public social agenda. This is known as the feed-forward loop. The goal is to build a clear representation of a possible future and then feed that anticipation directly back into the present to influence the decisions we are making right now. Taking action immediately forces a value judgment. If the future is truly open, steering society toward one possibility over another requires a futurist to state exactly what ethical values they stand on and explicitly identify who might be left behind in the world they are trying to build. To measure how deeply someone engages with these responsibilities, we can look at a matrix based on Richard Slaughter's layers of futures thinking. A pop approach only requires tracking signals. Reaching epistemological depth, asking how we shape the future, requires mastering all 6 requirements. Ultimately, the discipline of professional futurism is not a parlor trick meant to guess exactly what tomorrow will look like. It is a structured system designed to help us answer a much harder question: what future are we making, and for whom?